Patrick Mahomes is already sending the right kind of signal, and that's the part Chiefs fans need to lock in on first. He's not hiding, he's not checked out, and he's not floating through the offseason like somebody waiting for the calendar to save him. He's around, he's engaged, and from everything we're seeing in this Kansas City Chiefs news cycle, he's doing exactly what you want your franchise quarterback to do when he's working his way back. Stay visible, stay involved, and keep stacking. Progress. That sounds simple, but in a situation like this, simple is good. Simple means stable. Simple means the team isn't forcing the issue. And simple means the Chiefs are thinking long-term instead of chasing a headline that looks nice for a week and turns into a disaster by August. That's why the early read on this Chiefs News Today situation matters so much. A lot of people want to turn every off-season update into a full-blown emergency. But that's not how you handle a quarterback like Mahomes. And it's definitely not how Kansas City should handle a player who changes the entire temperature of the league when he's right. The point isn't to win, May. The point is to win when the games actually count. And if Mahomes is already showing up, already staying involved, already doing the little things that tell you he's committed to the process, then the biggest message is pretty clear. This thing is moving forward, and it's moving in the right direction. Now, that does not mean the timeline stops mattering. It absolutely matters. Chiefs fans know that. You can feel the tension in every update because there's always that one question hanging over everything. How fast is too fast? And that's where the smart money says patience has to win. There's a difference between being ahead of schedule and being ready to take the field like nothing happened. Those are not the same thing, not even close. Mahomes can be making real progress and still need guardrails. He can be doing a lot behind the scenes and still not need to be pushed into the kind of work that tests the injury before the body is truly ready. That's where a lot of fan bases get themselves twisted up. They confuse activity with readiness. They see movement and assume the next step has to be full speed. Not here. Not with this quarterback. Not with this franchise. And honestly, that's part of why this Kansas City Chiefs news topic hits so hard. Mahomes doesn't just play quarterback. He sets the pace for the whole operation. When he's on track, everybody else settles in. When he's trying to force his way through a rehab timeline, everything gets riskier. So even if the temptation is there to rush him, the smarter move is to keep stacking controlled progress and let the body catch up to the mind. That's the real story here. Not whether he can appear in a photo or show up at an event, but whether the next steps are being taken with discipline. That's what matters. And you already know Chiefs fans are watching this one a little differently than they would a normal off-season story. This is Patrick Mahomes. This is the guy who can make a broken play look like a miracle and a bad down feel like a setup for a touchdown. So when the conversation turns to rehab, practice, and what he can or can't do right now, people naturally lean in. That's fair. But the better question isn't, is he doing enough? It's, is he being managed correctly? Because those are two very different things. One is about panic. The other is about planning. And the Chiefs need planning, not panic. That's where this Chiefs News Today storyline starts to get really interesting. Because the early off-season window is not about proving something to the outside world. It's about building a runway. Mahomes doesn't need to sprint. He needs to land clean. He needs to keep making gains without inviting setbacks. And if that means the next phase is slower than some fans want, so be it. Slow is fine when slow is smart. Slow is fine when it protects the most important player on the roster. Slow is fine when the end goal is a healthy Mahomes with a full season in front of him, not a rushed version of him trying to play catch-up in May or June. So the big takeaway right now is simple. The Chiefs are not asking for panic, and Chiefs fans shouldn't give them any. Mahomes is making progress. The team knows the value of patience, and the timeline is going to be about control, not drama. That's the kind of Kansas City Chiefs news that should keep you focused, because the real story is not whether he's back at full speed today. It's whether every step he takes now gives the Chiefs a better chance to have him dangerous when the lights get brighter later in the year. Now here's where this Chiefs News Today conversation gets a lot more important, because the real challenge is not just getting Patrick Mahomes healthy enough to move around. It's making sure Kansas City does not accidentally turn a smart recovery into a dumb gamble. That's the part people overlook when they read a headline and think the whole story is just about one date on a calendar. It is not. This is Kansas City Chiefs news about control, and control is everything when you're dealing with a quarterback like Mahomes. The Chiefs do not need a heroic rush job. They need a clean buildup. They need the kind of process that keeps him from getting ahead of himself, because if there is one thing Mahomes has always had, it is confidence in his own ability to pull off the impossible. That is a gift, but it can also be a trap if the team lets him treat rehab like a challenge he has to win instead of a system he has to respect. And that is why the details matter so much. You are not just talking about whether he is throwing or whether he is walking around the facility looking normal. You are talking about how much of the offense can be built around what he can do safely right now. That means the Chiefs have to be careful with their reps, careful with the intensity, and very careful not to confuse looks fine with is fine. Those are not the same thing, and Chiefs fans know better than most fan bases that the line between those two things can be the difference between a smooth season and a headache nobody wants. The Chiefs have enough weapons, enough coaching, and enough structure to survive a patient approach. They do not need to force Mahomes into a bunch of unnecessary stress just to satisfy impatience from the outside. That is also where the conversation shifts from recovery to design. If you are serious about keeping Mahomes upright and effective, then the offense has to help him instead of asking him to fix everything by himself. That means quicker decisions. That means cleaner reads. That means not turning every snap into a 7-second improv session like he is auditioning for a street magician role. Funny as that sounds, it is also exactly the kind of thing Kansas City Chiefs news has to keep in mind this year. The Chiefs need to protect him from the version of himself that wants to create too much. Because when Mahomes is forced to be Superman all the time, the margin for error gets thin fast. The better version of this offense is one where he can be efficient, decisive, and dangerous without carrying every ounce of the load on his back. And that starts with the run game. That is the quiet part a lot of people do not want to say out loud, but it matters. If the Chiefs want Mahomes to be safer, then they have to lean harder into the backfield and stop acting like their run game is only there for decoration. A stronger rushing attack changes everything. It softens the pass rush. It keeps the offense ahead of the chains. It gives Mahomes easier answers early in games, which is huge when you are trying to keep him from having to play survival football in the pocket. Chiefs fans know what it looks like when the offense gets too cute and forgets balance. It turns into too many long downs, too many rush decisions, and too much pressure on one player to keep bailing everybody out. That cannot be the plan here. And here is the counterintuitive part. Making Mahomes safer might actually make the offense more dangerous by the time December rolls around. That sounds backwards at first, but it is true. If Kansas City is willing to simplify some early season concepts, use more quick game, and let the run game take on a bigger role, then Mahomes can build rhythm without taking all the hits that come with trying to do too much. That is how you make the season sustainable. Not by trying to impress everybody in week one. Not by forcing highlight throws when the smart throw is sitting right in front of you. But by building an offense that makes the defense guess wrong and makes Mahomes' job cleaner every single week. That is where the real value is. And yes, that means the Chiefs have to be willing to cut back on some of the stuff that used to be a bigger part of the offense. More quick throws, more practical answers, less waiting around for a deep shot to develop when the pocket is already starting to wobble. If you are a Chiefs fan, you should actually like that idea, because it is not about lowering expectations. It is about raising the floor. It is about making sure the offense can function even when the game gets messy. And every football season gets messy. Everyone. The teams that survive are the teams that can move the chains without begging for miracles. That is why this whole Kansas City Chiefs news situation feels so important right now. It is not just about rehab, and it is not just about football theory. It is about building an environment where Mahomes does not have to be perfect to be effective. That is the sweet spot. That is where the Chiefs need to live. And if they get that right, then the rest of the league is going to be dealing with a quarterback who is healthy, sharp, and far more dangerous than the people who are obsessing over may timelines want to admit. That is the real endgame here, and it is why this Kansas City Chiefs news story matters more than the usual off-season noise. The goal is not to make Patrick Mahomes look ready in May. The goal is to make him dangerous when it actually counts. When the defense is fresh, the margins are tight, and every throw gets magnified. Chiefs fans know this better than most. The season is not won by the loudest update, the flashiest practice clip, or the most dramatic quote. It is won by the team that keeps stacking smart decisions while everybody else is busy chasing instant gratification. And right now, the smartest thing Kansas City can do is win the long game. That means Mahomes does not need to be treated like a player who has to prove anything every single day. He is already the standard. The bigger question is whether the Chiefs can build a season around protecting that standard instead of testing it. That is where the real value is in Chiefs news today. If they keep him clean, keep him comfortable, and keep the offense built around manageable answers early, then they give themselves a much better chance to peak when the calendar matters most. And that matters, because the AFC is not going to hand anything to them. Nobody is taking a year off and letting Kansas City coast. If the Chiefs want the road through the conference, they have to be disciplined now so they can be lethal later. There is also something important about the way Mahomes plays through adversity. He has never been a quarterback who needs everything to be perfect before he can hurt you. That is part of why he is who he is. But this season, that same trait has to be managed a little differently. The instinct to extend, improvise, and make something out of nothing is still there. And honestly, that will always be part of his greatness. The trick is making sure it does not become a liability while he is still getting back to full strength. That is where smart coaching comes in. That is where play design matters. That is where the Chiefs have to be stubborn about keeping the offense efficient instead of reckless. If the pocket is clean, if the reads are quick, and if the supporting pieces are doing their job, then Mahomes can still be Mahomes without being asked. Teams behave. They do not get emotional about every checkpoint. They keep building. They keep adjusting. They keep their best players in position to matter when the stakes are highest. So, the question for you is simple. Do you care more about Mahomes looking explosive in June, or do you care more about him being fully dangerous in January? Because that answer tells you everything about how you should view this whole situation. If you are thinking like a contender, the choice is obvious. You want health, rhythm, and control. You want a quarterback who can breathe through the early part of the year and still be right there when it turns into playoff football. That is the real prize, not some empty off-season win that looks good for a week and costs you later. And that is where I'll leave it with you. If you want more Chiefs news, Kansas City Chiefs news, and Chiefs news today that actually makes sense and cuts through the noise, make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it, and help push this channel towards 7,000 subscribers. That support keeps this whole thing moving, and it means a lot. Turn on notifications too, because you do not want to miss what comes next from Total Chiefs News. Now I want to hear from you. What matters more this season? Mahomes' numbers or Mahomes being healthy when January rolls around?